Happy Monday, folks. Hope y'all had a great weekend. I know with this cold front coming in, I'm having a hard time focus today because we're right at the beginning of the rut. And if you're a deer hunter, you understand my struggles. With that being said, let's talk about the market, and I want to dive into a few things today. So I want to talk about 50-year mortgages. I want to talk about the FHA dropping their credit requirement. And I want to talk about how I'm seeing more conversations about the tokenization of real estate. But before we dive into all that, let's talk about the numbers. So right now in all of the MLS, we've got 7,559 homes hit the market last week, 6,660 new listings, 899 homes came back on the market. If you watched my video last week, I talked about the back on market and some of the things I'm seeing where you're seeing 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 homes come back on the market, but it's actually kind of skewed. And at the end of the day, we really don't know how many homes are falling out of option period or escrow, depending on what market you're in. But if you look at the homes that went under contract or came off the market, it was almost 14,000 properties. I'm not going to go into all that. I'm going to put the numbers up right here and you can see what those are. So you can see out of that, the big number that I like to see is the pending and the sold. So there's a lot of pending, a lot of sold homes. We are seeing properties move right now. Very neutral market in North Texas. I mean, it's definitely not a buyer's market. It's definitely not a seller's market. It's a very neutral market. One would even call it a normal market. Now let's take a look at the mortgage rates. Last week, we started off with the mortgage rate sitting at 6.33. This week, they're starting off at about 6.32, which is down a little bit from last Monday, but up from Thursday. Last Thursday, the interest rates actually got down to 6.17, and now they're up just a little bit more. But really, folks, at the end of the day, that micro adjustment is going to make a huge difference in your monthly payment. Now, let's talk about home affordability and this new conversation we're hearing about a 50-year mortgage. Now, 50-year mortgages have actually been around for a while. They've always been predominantly what I would call like a portfolio loan, meaning, well, you can Google what a portfolio loan is. And there's some pros and cons to a 50-year mortgage. The biggest pro is going to be just a lower monthly payment. And the con is going to be a much longer term, slower principal payoff, and lots more interest. I mean, it's a lot more interest that you're going to be paying if you actually bought a home, let's say when you were 18 and you lived in it for 50 years. But the average homeowner now stays in their home for about 11.9 years, which is actually up from 2006, where the average homeowner stayed in for about 6.5 years. And I would assume with the increase in interest rates that we're going to see more homeowners staying in their home longer just because of that whole rate lock effect. It's really difficult to leave a nice home when you've got a 2 or 3% interest rate and go buy a much nicer home or even an equivalent home at a higher price with a higher interest rate, because it's going to drastically change your payment. It's going to change your taxes. It's going to change a lot of things. So we're definitely seeing that rate lock effect. I will say, though, that if you get a 50-year note and you're disciplined, there can be some benefit to it. And let me kind of explain this scenario. This isn't exact, but it's going to give you a good example. Like, people come to me sometimes and say, hey, Chris, we're trying to decide, should we get a 15-year note or a 30-year note? I usually try to advise people to get a 30-year note and then just make an extra payment every month. And it's going to put you right about the same range as your 15-year note. But if something happens, you lose your job, you get sick, times get hard, you have that lower monthly payment because you have the 30-year note. But if you're disciplined enough with that 30-year mortgage and you make that double payment, you're going to turn that 30-year mortgage into about, it's not exactly, but about 12 years. And you're going to save a ton of interest. And I think the same thing could be applied to a 50-year mortgage, to where if you got a 50-year mortgage and you made, let's say, double payments, what's that going to turn it into? I don't know, because I haven't actually done one. This is just a little bit of speculation, but I would assume there's going to be some pros and cons to it, just like everything else. But one of my biggest concerns with this is it is going to push values up, because so many consumers look at their monthly payment more than just what they're looking to buy a home. And I'm guilty of this too. I've told people, somebody will come to me and they're like, hey, Chris, we're looking to buy a home. I say, great. What's your price point? I say 500,000. I'm like, awesome. How'd you come up with that? I don't know. I just like 500,000. It's a fun number. I say, great. That's understandable. Let's get you in contact with a lender. Let's find out what your down payment is, what you're comfortable with, and what your comfortable monthly payment. And then we're going to find out how much home you can afford based off of that, your down payment and your affordability on your monthly payment. So if the note goes up higher, then obviously you're going to be able to afford a more expensive home. So like I said, pros and cons to this, I don't really know what to say about it. I mean, as prices go up, we do need to figure out some ways to make it affordable for people to get into the homes. So I don't know. It is what it is, and we'll see how this one unfolds down the road. Now, let's take a look at this whole FHA dropping their required credit score rating. That's actually not true. They haven't just fully dropped it. Like it's not like, you know, like a VA loan, to my knowledge. I don't think VA loans have to have a certain credit score, but they look at other things. But let's kind of dive into this real quick. So there's been some confusion here about the FHA. It didn't drop the credit rate requirement, but they did adjust it. Now, the first thing I noticed was a minimum FICO score of 580 is still required to get that 3.5% down payment. Borrowers worth of 500 to 579 can still qualify for an FHA, but they're going to have to put more money down. And a lot of lenders are still going to require, just for their own protection, that a buyer has that 620 to 640 range. However, some lenders are going to start looking at other things like your vintage score, not just your FICO score. And I'm not going to go into detail what that is in today's video. And there's a couple examples where I can see where this will actually be beneficial, because I know people where this would actually help them. And in this one particular scenario, I'd like to explain it to you. Let's say that you're a contractor, whatever it is, striping, concrete, construction, whatever it might be. But like, just kind of picture a contractor individual. You've dumped a lot of money into your company. You've bought trucks, you've bought equipment, you've done a lot. Things got a little bit difficult, and maybe you had to put payroll on a credit card or something of that nature. But you've done some things to keep your business afloat that's affected your credit score. But you've been good on your monthly payments with rent, and you haven't really done anything that would look bad on paper, but your credit score is down a bit just because you've been trying to get your business up and running. Well, now your company's going great. You've got lots of contract, you've got business coming in. You're so damn busy, the biggest problem for you right now is just getting workers to finish the work. But you'd like to buy a house now. Well, I think it would be nice if lenders would look at this and see the pattern of the borrower versus just looking at your FICO score to determine whether you are or are not a good buyer. So in a scenario like that, I could see this being beneficial. So corporations are looking to tokenize homes. And if you don't believe me, I want you to take a look at Larry Fink and what he has to say about this.
I do believe we're just at the beginning of the tokenization of all assets, from real estate to equities, the bonds, across the board.
It's very loud here.
It's very loud.
But it's good. Capital's at work, Larry. You like that.
I love capital at work.
Yeah.
But there's $4.1 trillion of money sitting globally in digital wallets. A lot of that money is outside the United States. If we could tokenize a ETF, digitize that ETF, we could have investors who are just beginning to, invest in markets through, let's say, crypto. They're investing in it, but now we could get them into the more traditional long-term retirement products. So we look at that as the next wave of opportunity for BlackRock over the next tens of years, as we start moving away from traditional financial assets by repotting them in a digital manner, and then having people stay in that digital ecosystem.
And with blockchain technology evolving, real estate tokenization has gained a lot of attraction. And home ownership is going to become more accessible, more transparent, more tradable. So that's what they're telling us, but I don't necessarily believe it. And this will bring some pros and cons. And to be honest, it makes me a little nervous for younger folks, because I remember this thing going around talking about you're going to own nothing and be happy. So maybe you remember that, maybe you don't. So if you have companies sitting on gobs of crypto like BlackRock and others, and they start using that to buy homes, then tokenize that asset to back their cryptocurrency, it's going to be even harder for the average man to compete. And BlackRock claims that they're not directly buying homes, but they're investing heavily in companies that do. That's kind of like me saying, I didn't buy the ice cream, but my wife went to the store yesterday and she bought it. And then I sat on the couch and ate it. Yeah, I didn't buy it, but the money came from the same place, and I'm still reaping the benefits of that ice cream. So at the end of the day, I don't really know exactly what's going to happen with this, but what I do know is there's a strong demand for home ownership in North Texas, and values keep going up. And for about the past 2 years, depending on where you are in Texas, you're seeing about a 2 to 4% increase in value. And some areas like Argyle have really increased. And major corporations are entering into the market in new ways that we haven't seen in the past. And most buyers have really been competing with these corporate buyers, I would say pretty heavily since 2015. And then if we move into this new crypto market, what is that going to do to buyers? Like, how much more difficult is it going to be for the average man to buy a home? And by man, I don't mean man, I mean human. But at the end of the day, what do you think? I'm curious. Let me know in the comments. Do you think now is a good time to buy? Should we wait until next spring? Or should you just wait? Do you think a crash is coming and then you're going to try to capitalize it at that time? I don't know. You let me know. I'd love to hear your comments down below.